So, as Emma said, my background is that I've been in LA for the past decade. I came from William and Mary. I had a degree in theater and Asian American studies. My mentor was basically Professor Francis Tanglo Aguas, who some of you might be familiar with. He was the one that got me onto this track. So, the most important thing that we're going to talk about is that for those who are interested in acting, whether you guys go to Los Angeles or New York, or nowadays there are other hubs happening like Atlanta or Vancouver. They are all kind of the same in terms of getting talent representation. And there's usually always like a mythical aura to it that like you have to be found on the streets, or you have to have extraordinary talent, or you have to be really, really, really good looking. And I have to tell you that those are great and they're all great, but none of that really matters. Is just knowing, first off, the first thing I'm gonna tackle is just your type. And type doesn't mean that you have to be pigeonholed that this is the only type of person you can play, but it's a good foundation. And once you know that foundation, all of the things I'm about to tell you will make things a lot easier. So the number one thing is just basically know who you are, know your type. So you can kind of find that out by asking your closest friends and the ones who've known you for a really long time. Like if they can describe you in a sentence, like your mannerisms, your character, your personality, if there's a consensus of like how the people who know you the most, like this is what they say about you, then you have an idea of like this is what you're going to work with at the very beginning when you kind of like venture into acting, getting headshots, and then also like getting talent representation. So yeah, number one is finding your type in terms of like, what kind of person you are. From there, when you get into Los Angeles and New York, obviously the other basic stuff like survival stuff, getting a job, so that you're not poor and hungry and living in the streets. The thing that you need to have is that you need headshots, you need a website to kind of showcase who you are, and then a demo reel. And so your headshots has to look like you. And the misconception is that the headshots, people want them to look at themselves at their finest, and that's not the case. You need the headshots to look like you, like to show your essence. So if you have like a mischievous aspect about you, or you're kind of known as a very stoic individual, or you're a very goofy individual, like these are the things these headshots need to capture, so that when an agent or a casting directors, by the way, are the ones who hire you for the show when they cast the show. They need to look at the headshot and be like, okay, this is the individual. I get everything just from that picture itself. So these are the things that you can actually kind of get a head start, especially for students at William and Mary. There are headshot photographers. They may not be like the professional, fancy schmancy ones that Los Angeles and New York ones have, but if your friend or you have a photographer friend or acquaintance who has an idea how to capture people, you can just get started right now. Just get it started. Just find some good background. Usually outdoor areas are good for headshots. Just takes a few shots, and that's how you can get started. A lot of things I'm going to tell you right now are dependent on you actually moving to that market. So some of you may not, this is probably not even something you'd be worried about yet, because you probably still have a year or two or more left in your college experience. But some of the things that I can tell you now, you can kind of get a head start in it. And the head start, like I said before, is the number one thing being like, know your type, just like who you are, which can be kind of hard for college students because everyone's like, I don't know who I am. You'll eventually get there. So just kind of start thinking about that from the get-go. Number two is, like I said, the headshots thing. And then number three is having a website. Now, the website thing is not complicated. There nowadays, like when I started acting back in like 2010, there weren't so many user-friendly websites available. But now you have things like WordPress, Wix, like these websites make it super easy for people who have no idea how to make any websites. They're very convenient for those who can do so. So these websites, the function of it is that you basically put your headshot or put some sort of photo shoot that shows who you are, something a little about yourself, any acting stuff you've done. So when you start off in acting, especially for you guys who have done like short films in William and Mary, or like you've done theater productions at the theater department. Granted, this is probably a little before the pandemic, but even during the pandemic where, there were virtual productions going on, these are still valid things you can put on the resume. It's good to have something on the resume. So it just shows that you have something to go off of, even if it's not a fancy credit, it shows that you're doing something. So the resume part is important in terms of getting your stuff going. The next essential thing you need is a demo reel. A demo reel is basically your golden ticket to getting the talent representation. They need to see your work. They need to see what you can do. And it doesn't have to be, once again, like the resume, doesn't have to be fancy. It just has to show you walk and talk and just show your essence. Once again, if you know who you are, kind of like what kind of personality you go for, those are the ones that will do you best. So a great example is that most sitcoms, especially like TV series, procedurals or sitcoms, those actors are not doing anything fancy. They're basically playing themselves, and that's what you need to hone in on. It's like, yes, you can say it's good to know who you are, but then can you do that when a camera is rolling and there's multiple people staring at you, and you still have the comfort and the natural ease of just being yourself in front of a lot of people? That's important to have. So the demo reel is basically your ticket of showing like who you are, and just like, it doesn't have to be long. It can be a minute long, it can be 3 minutes long, no more than 3 minutes, but basically within that time frame, just showing who you are. Now, good examples of demo reel foot, I would say bad examples of demo reel footage is I've seen a lot of things where people do montage sequences of people jumping, laughing, and crying. You don't want that. No one cares about you laughing and crying. They just want to see you talk. They want to see you be able to act and see what you can do. It doesn't mean you have to go Shakespeare or dramatic. Actually, strangely enough, when it comes to like, especially Los Angeles people, they don't care about Shakespeare. Like, no one cares about Shakespeare in Los Angeles. New York people, if you are getting into theater, that's a different story. They love Shakespeare. Awesome. Los Angeles, no, no Shakespeare. Just be who you are. Just say the things that you need to do. Now, this is something that I encourage every actor to start. Once again, a little bit premature considering how many people have yet to get into the acting world. But the most important thing is accountability. Accountability in terms of like the people you meet, like every single person you meet, whether it be a director, producer, writer, casting director, you kind of want to put like a tracking sheet of just like who they are, when was the last time you met, which kind of all can be boggling. It can be very, very hard to keep up with. But over time, if you make it a practice of just like, okay, I met this person, I'm going to keep that track down, I'm going to have an email there. It makes life a lot easier and a way for you to kind of like keep tabs of them. So it's like you send an email, maybe just check up like every few months, that kind of thing. That being said, the most important thing is being genuine. So I found out that if you don't like that person's work and you still be like, well, I want to keep up with them because maybe they'll make me go ahead in my career. That's usually not a good practice because they can sense that genuineness. They can sense that whether you actually like their work or you're just kind of like just kissing their butt. So if you can find people that you're passionate about, whether it be, you can start now too. If there's like filmmakers or people in the William Mary School that you know that they're really passionate about filmmaking, or when they're playwrights or that kind of thing, these are the people that you kind of want to keep tabs with for pretty much the rest of your life. Here in Los Angeles, there's a good bunch of William and Mary people here. We've all come together from the beginning, from one particular person I know who is now a playwright here in Los Angeles. But these are the kind of people you just keep tabs of, because you never know, in probably a decade or 2 decades from now, you'll all be working on something together and it'll all just be one big happy family. So yeah, accountability, tracking. For me, what's easiest is creating a document. Excel does it the best for me. So you can just probably just put the individual when you last met them, and then just kind of keep tabs on that. And then you just kind of look through it, which comes in handy, which will come to the most essential thing that I'm talking about, is getting that talent representation. So once again, there are two different types of representation in when it comes to Los Angeles and New York, and that is the commercial world, and then there is the theatrical world. The commercial world, as it's self-explanatory, the commercial world is pretty much what you see on television when it comes to all the ads like Geico or Staples or McDonald's. And then there's the theatrical world when in terms of like movies and TV shows. Now, when it comes to commercials, commercial people don't care about demo reels. They just want to see a good headshot. Once again, that's where knowing your type comes in. So that if you know that you excel in being like the awkward like IT person, or you are the very like the gruff like in a blue collar kind of worker, or you're the goofy office worker. These are the types to know, so that when you have these headshots, commercial agents can look at that and they know exactly what they're getting with. I do know that when it comes to Los Angeles, New York, commercial agents love improv classes for whatever reason. So even if you have like got improv training in William and Mary in college or whatever, they don't really care about that because they care about the name value. Now, some of this information might be a little old, like now before the pandemic, the big schools were like UCB, Groundlings, or Second City, or iOS. Those are like the meccas of like improv schools in the country. Nowadays, it's hard to say because UCB might be dead and iOS is officially dead. Groundlings might have survived. Second City might have survived. So who knows? That's a very like a Wild Wild West territory in terms of who's actually gonna survive after the pandemic. So who knows? Maybe by the end of this, the improv school doesn't matter at all. And as long as your credits or resume says you have improv training, that might be all you need. It's hard to say on that one. So when it comes to submitting for a commercial agency, and this is just for commercial agents specifically, uh, actually, it also applies to theatrical as well. The email headline says everything because that's what they're going to use. They're going to look at that and decide if they're going to click on it or they're going to ignore it completely. So what I've noticed that worked for me, and what that worked best for me, is that back, I use it still now, is that when I got the commercial agent that I have currently, I put on the headline bracket for commercial representation, end of bracket, Edward Hong, the Asian Ted Mosby. Now, this is obviously dated because this was back when How I Met Your Mother was in its heyday. It was very, very popular. And I compared myself with the main character, but it gave the agent a good idea of who I was just from that one headline alone. So everyone has a different way of doing it. Some people decide to go for shock factor of like making some really like bold, shocking joke to get the agent's attention. I found that the safest way is just kind of like just pitching yourself right then and there in that one sentence, the subject headline, who you are and why they should be interested in you. So that it makes it very clear that you're interested in pursuing that agent. And by sending that email, you never have to say things like, I am interested in pursuing representation. Everyone knows you're interested just by emailing you. They know that you want something. So you don't have to say any of that. You just get straight to the point of just being like, this is who you are. This is my stuff. Let's meet whenever you're free. And then just go from there. These emails honestly don't have to be more than like a few sentences long. I've seen mistakes that rookies often make is that they provide long biography of just like everything they've done, their dreams and passion. No one cares about your dreams and passion. They just want to care about what you can do and who you are, what's your goods. That's it. And if they're interested, great. If not, they're going to move on. I The best comparison I have for acting, and some of you probably are aware of this already, acting is kind of like dating. It's like you date all these people and maybe one of them will stick. But more often than not, it's going to be a lot of duds. It's going to be a lot of failures. It's going to be like, that's awkward, that kind of thing. That's going to be the same thing for getting a talent representation too. It's going to be a lot of that weird thing where you send an email to an agent, no matter how good that email is. And more often than not, there will be no response, which is, I guess, kind of similar to the dating world where people just ghost you, or probably my experience in the dating world, people just ghost me. Who knows? That's kind of that's kind of what it is. So that's the things you need to have. So that cover letter, honestly, is not it's fancy. It's short, it's sweet, and it gets straight to the point. And now that's basically for the commercial agency side. For the theatrical agency side, it's pretty similar to that. Once again, the email headline being the catchy thing of like, okay, why are they interested in you? I also used the Asian Ted Mosby when I was going for talent representation in the theatrical side. In the theatrical side, the demo reel does count. Yes, there are stories, and we hear it all the time, of people who have literally been picked from the streets, or they were just a gorgeous model or whatever. That does happen, but I like to have the actors prepared, to have everything covered, so that there can be no excuses of just like you don't have the materials if the person is looking for it. So like I said before, the demo reel is essential. You need to have the demo reel. It can be a combination of comedic and like dramatic stuff, but it needs to be your best in terms of what best captures your essence, and also just if you can, being the most professionally shot. The camera quality is good, but what's even more important is sound quality. They need to actually hear what you're saying, so it can't be like one of those really bad like amateur productions where you hear someone's mic go like. They need clear sound so they know what they're getting into. So once again, the demo reel, the headshots, and then once again, this is also, this is more primarily for actors who have kind of already been in the journey already, but if you have relations with casting director folks, that Excel sheet that I mentioned earlier will help you, and so that the agents can look at the Excel sheet and go, okay, these are the casting directors this actor knows that they have relationships with, and I can just bank off of that. And that's gonna be, this tip will serve you well from whether you start off into acting or you're 20 years into acting. It is going to be essential no matter what, so that if I change my agency or manager, go with a different one, I show them the Excel sheet of everything I've ever done, everyone I've ever met. They can just look at that and be like, okay, I know what I can work with, and go to where to go from there. It is obvious that in this, especially in Los Angeles, New York, and these major acting towns, that relationships do matter a lot. So if you have a referral from an actor who already has the agency, so let's say you as a William Mary student are about to move to those big cities, you're like, all right, and then you know someone that, not someone that you haven't talked to in like a decade, but someone who actually is a good friend that you trust, and they trust you, that they are working in Los Angeles. It doesn't hurt to ask them for like, hey, can you refer me? Especially if they know your talent, if they know that you're a good actor, it doesn't hurt to do. The worst thing they can do is either ignore you or just like saying, not right now. But it's always good to have that one foot in the door so that someone can vouch for you, because in this town, Los Angeles and wherever, having people vouching for you is probably one of the best golden currencies in ever. So it'll be good to have that. So once again, submitting to a theatrical agency, not too different from the commercial side. You do need to show the demo reel. You need to do that kind of thing. So a cover letter that I've sent to, when I look back, I just certainly go, dear insert agent name, I'd love to set up a meeting with you this week to see if we'd be a good match. Please find attach my headshot and resume. Thank you. Sincerely, your name, and then your website, and then your direct reel link, so they can just be like, boom, all the materials are right there and then. Now, mailed submissions are pretty much a thing of the past. So people wondering like, should I email my stuff or mail my stuff? Nowadays, everything's all digital. Everyone's going digital. So it'll be rare to find examples where people will say, I'll accept mail submissions or only accept mail submissions. Yes, there will be agencies on there. If you look up their websites, they may say only mailed submissions, no emails. I kind of ignore it, just email it. The worst thing they can do is just not click on it or just ignore it completely. And it saves you paper, and it saves you postage, and it saves the environment. So I always approve, saving your resources when you can. So that covers that with the mail thing, and then casting office. So that's pretty much the basics of, in terms of finding talent representation. I am going to open this floor because I know that a lot of you are thinking about going in acting, or maybe not, or maybe have concerns about like, should acting be a thing for me? Is it even feasible? Do people like me, let's say in terms of representation, do we even have a chance? I'm going to open it up. If I don't have any questions, I can probably blather on to oblivion. But in the meantime, if you have questions, you can just go on the chat box. You don't have to show your face if you're like, oh, it's too early in the morning. Just go in the chat box and just write questions if you have questions. And then I'll wait, smile, and see what happens.
Feel free to also raise your hand if you
Oh,
want
yes.
to, or unmute. But chat box is also fine.
Yeah, chat box is fine if you don't want to talk.
Ted.
So I came in a little late, so I apologize if you went over this already. Um, what are some of the types of jobs you get as an actor? So I think I know my first instinct would be to think of film and TV, but can you talk about some of the other roles that actors do professionally?
In terms of jobs actors do, I remember this quote from Danny Trejo, and people are asking like, "Why do you do all these jobs you do?" And he goes like, "As an actor to survive, like if you give me a house, I'll paint it." Like that's his motto, and that's something that always stuck with me because it's I think as actors, we need to be versatile in terms of what we want to do. I've talked to actors who are like, oh no, I won't do commercials. No commercials for me. I'm not going to sell myself out for a product, which I find admirable. I get it. Yes, especially if you have strong ethical morals in terms of like, I don't want to represent this company. I totally get that. But to say that I am not going to do, let's say, I'm not going to do commercials. I am not going to do student films. I am not going to do these kind of things. Now, granted, there is parameters of like especially when it comes to sensitivity. Like if it's let's say a woman who's like, I am not going to do nudity in films. That's awesome. Like you need to know where your integrity is. You need to know where you are comfortable with and what you are not comfortable with, and kind of like set your boundaries from that. But when it comes to like not kind of those things, but more of like the types of films, like whether it be student films or commercials, those are the things that actors need to be open about. So, for example, student film. Um, I know it gets a lot of poo-poo on, especially from professional actors, that once you make it to a certain status, you don't need to do those student films. Yes and no. If you're like Gwyneth Paltrow or Tom Cruise, yeah, you don't need to do student films. But when it comes to actors who are still they're still working actors, they're not known yet, they're not like making millions of dollars yet. Student films, I encourage and argue that that is something you should always be on the lookout for. Now, you can always have your criteria of like student films being like I'll only do thesis level films because you know those students for sure are going to be serious about the career after they graduate from their college. So here in Los Angeles, the biggest university schools are USC, Chapman, and AFI. Those three come up a lot because those are the ones that they acknowledge as like these students are going to go off into like really serious filmmaking. For example, like Ryan Coogler came from USC. I believe he came from, yeah, he came from USC. And so people who knew him from USC, they're all like traveling together because they're all friends, that kind of thing. So it's like you establish your friendships early on, you take chances with these student film directors. And honestly, more often than not, like most student film directors I've worked with in the past, they've all gone on to direct TV shows and movies. So you kind of want to be like, give them a shot at the beginning because they're going to remember you, you know, as they pursue in their career. That also the good motto of being an actor is that you treat everyone the way you want to be treated. So just because they're the personal assistant, or even if they're like the executive producer or like the director, you should all they're all equal. There's no one that's like less deserving of value or more deserving of value. Everyone is awesome. Like that's something you have to remember. You cannot treat them as if they're below you or above you. They are equals to you, and that is something you need to keep in mind. Um, so yeah, in terms of the work I've personally done, I've pretty much I realize covered the bases of it. Like I've done like TV work, I've done film, I've done theater, I've done voiceovers, um, I've done commercials. Those are the areas I've done, and I think it's definitely benefited me as an actor because I get experience from like if I do theater, I know that that's the one area, and I still love it because I love the idea. I love the aspect of just like being able to perform in front of a live audience, which you'll never get with like a film. Like you'll just get cuts, and then you hope to God that the editing is going to be good. You hope to God that they'll do a good job. But when it comes to theater, it's all on you, baby. Like if you mess up, that's on you. There's no one else to blame except for you. So I think it is essential for actors to be open-minded, to do any work that is that will benefit them, because it will obviously and they will enrich you. So like me doing voiceovers has a strain of kind of like the theater background, because especially if I do animated stuff like video games or like animated TV shows, I get to use my larger than life aspect of myself and just put that into the voiceover world, which is great. So I tell actors, don't like look into all of them, be knowledgeable about all those things, and be curious about it. Like don't close yourself up because you're like, well, I don't know about voiceovers, I don't know about commercials. Be open to it, because one thing, the commercials, a friend of mine worked on a Dr. Pepper commercial last year during the pandemic, and she didn't know who the director was, and the director was like kept anonymous, and she shows up on set, and oh my god, what's his name? Someone tell me the I'm blanking. Yeah, the director of Thor Ragnarok.
Oh, like
Taika Waititi shows up on set. He's dressed in his fabulous Hawaiian shirts, and he's just like, "Hello, everyone," and she is just like, "Oh my God, it's Taika. He's directing this Dr. Pepper spot." You don't know who's going to direct the spot, because a lot of time these directors, film directors, TV directors, even theater directors, they work on commercials because it pays the bills. And so they'll do it because it's like, hey, this will be fun to do and I get to make some money out of it. And you as the actor be like, oh my God, this is someone I'm working with. I'm definitely going to keep tabs on that. So that's important to have, that you don't want to turn these things down. Granted, like I said before about ethical boundaries, like if you personally are like, I don't support this product because they are very anti this, that is your prerogative. And if you have good relationships with your agents, they'll understand that. Like I've told my agents, like I've turned down auditions from Chick-fil-A or Walmart because I'm like, I don't like what the company does. They go, cool, that's fine. There's plenty of other auditions. So that's something, as long as you are comfortable as an actor, and you know that about yourself, your agency, if they're on the same page, they go along with it. Which that's also another note. The agency works for you. You do not work for your agency. There's a reason there's a saying that agencies get 10% of your commission. That also means they do 10% of the work. You do 90% of the work. So that means you are the captain of the ship. You are the one that steers it. So yes, you should get feedback and suggestions and the advice of your agents and listen to them. But in the end, you know what's best for you. So if your agent is insisting that this is who you are, I'm going to submit you, especially like for Asian actresses that are like, oh, I'm only going to submit you for Asian prostitutes or Asian foreigner roles, and then those kind of things. And then you as the actor, like, I don't want that. I want something more. I want the ones where I'm not just some foreigner or some prostitute or some victim. I want to be like the badass or the office worker or the doctor, that kind of thing. And the agent still doesn't get on board. Fire that agent. They don't work for you. Wait, they work for you. You don't work for them. So hopefully that answers the question in terms of like what you should be seeking as actors in terms of work.
thanks very much.
There are a lot of questions. Here we go. How far can one get without representation? At what point is it mandatory? It is important in a sense that they are kind of like the gatekeepers. They're the ones who have access to like the really big high profile projects. So like if you want to go out for like TV shows out right now, like any of those millions of NCISs are out there, or any, let's say the next Damien Chazelle project, you're probably not going to get that audition without an agent. That being said, it is very, very possible to get work as an actor on your own. When you get to any of those major hubs, there is one major website that everyone uses, and it's called Actors Access. The website is actorsaccess.com, which I'll just write here, actorsaccess.com. That it's when you make that profile, it's free to make. Obviously, you'll need to pay to get headshots uploaded, but that website will be something you need to keep in mind, because wherever you go, you need actorsaccess.com, because actorsaccess.com is connected with a service called Breakdown Services, and that's what all talent representation in Hollywood, Los Angeles, New York, Vancouver, Atlanta, they all use that site. They all use that service, because that's where all the breakdowns basically is like the descriptions of the characters they need for any given TV show or film. They're going to put it on there. And then if you have Actors Access, that's how they get you auditions from that. So actorsaccess.com is great for that. And actorsaccess.com is great because there's so many projects that people upload, whether it be student films or indie films. These are things you can audition on your own. These are things that you can just seriously just submit. Like you attach your headshot and your demo reel with the appropriate, like the ones that seem most appropriate to your type, and like saying, okay, I can totally do that. So obviously if there's a role breakdown, like someone who is 65 and older, and if you're like a 20-year-old dude, please don't waste their time. I've been behind the scene working with casting, and I've seen like submissions where it's like, okay, we need a Black woman who's in her 30s, and I can't tell you how many submissions I've seen from white men in their 40s who are like, what are you doing, man? Don't do that. This is how you get on the casting's bad side. Submit for the things that are appropriate to you. So that being said, you can get to a point of talent without talent representation. You can get work, and that actually is like once again the hustle of it. So in terms of like how do I get work and that kind of thing, you kind of have to go find it. So it's like what I always did was that, especially when I was starting, I was hungry for like getting to know people. So I would go to like film festivals. I would be like, especially short films, because those are the ones where that's where directors usually put their they put their foot forward. So I go to a short film showcase for any given film festival, and once in a while there'll be a film that'll blow me away. And more often than not, the director is going to be at the Q&A. You strike up a conversation. Obviously, granted, don't be creepy, don't be a jerk, be a genuine, honest person and be like, hey, man, I really like your work. I would love to keep in contact. I'm an actor, kind of thing. And that's how relationships form. And that's how you can technically like be able to go so far without representation to the point that you do, because you do want to get paid the higher bucks. You want to get paid like for national commercials. On an average basis, national commercials can make for an actor about $20,000 to $50,000 per commercial. That is how much you can make in a commercial. And if you get one of those like really great series regulars where you're one of the main people of, let's say, the next NCIS show, those people, especially when they're starting out their first year, they make about $15,000 to $20,000 per episode. That's a lot of money. Those are great. Those are things to keep in mind. But to get those jobs, you need to have that agency representation. But it's not the be all end all. Sometimes having a really bad agent, someone who doesn't care about you, is worse than having no agent at all. So this is where it's like, if you have an agent, be selective. Just because you're new, just because you are green, it doesn't mean that you can go with just anyone. You have your boundaries, you have your respect. So at least think of that and know that, once again, you are the captain. You drive the ship, not them. So if they bully you or they insist on you need to do this and this is this, you need to pay my friend who's a photographer these headshots. No, you don't. You don't have to do any of that, because once again, actors are the ones in control here. So hopefully that answers the questions about without representation. Talent showcases. Talent showcases are good. There's definitely been some kerfuffle about that in the past few years before the pandemic about the legality of agents showcases. They still exist. It's not illegal to do so, but it doesn't guarantee you will be signed. It is kind of a pay to play thing because you have to pay money. Whether it's like, so whether you do a one-on-one meeting with an agent or you do a talent showcase, like where a bunch of agents are watching you, how it works is that you find a scene or a monologue that best represents you. So if you do a scene with another person, let's say another actor who you know also needs representation, you do a scene that best represents both of you. That showcases both of you. You do your scene, you rehearse it, you put it up, and then hopefully someone likes you. Someone goes, hey, I like that. I want that person on my team. They are feasible and attainable for not only new actors, but also for actors who are veterans. If they need new representation, they go do a talent showcase. That being said, you don't always have to do that. Like there are ways to not pay for a showcase. If you're like, I really don't like that, you can do it. This talent showcase is just one avenue. It's just one way of doing things that can help you get seen, but it's not the be all and end all for that. Let's see. Seems like agents are only interested in talking to you until you already done something. How do you get your first job? How did you do it? Oh man. A lot of times it feels like a catch-22. It's like an agent will only be interested in you if you have a good job, but you can't get the good job if you don't have a good agent. So it just becomes like this. So all I can say is that there's no real answer to that, which I know sucks, but you can get the interest of an agent with no credits. I've had friends, and it doesn't mean it fit into the stereotypes of like what actors like the extraordinary good looking or extraordinarily funny kind of thing. It can simply be about type. It just be like, hey, you got a skill set or you got a look that I don't have. That literally is all it is, where it's just like it could be as specific as like Maybe you're like, I'm an albino, and it's like, I want an albino, I'll get that. Or if it's like, I need someone who can speak this particular language. Or for example, nowadays it's like there seems to be a lot of crossovers with the Asian market and that kind of thing. So if you as an actor know an Asian language, that's going to be great. And it's not just applicable to Asian people, like Asian actors. Like if you are a non-Asian actor and you can speak Mandarin fluently, you are a hot commodity. Like, holy crap. Like if you can speak Mandarin well, woo, go for that, man. They're going to want that. So these are these skill sets help you be more attainable in that sense, but it's not like, it's like the credits you have doesn't necessarily mean anything. It will help. Like if they can see that you've had credits before, they'll be more likely to look at you. But ultimately, it's just about if they need someone like you can have all the greatest jobs in the world. And if they don't have someone like if you are, let's say, this is a very, very overstuffed category. Like if you're in a mid 40s, older Caucasian male category, it's a very, very competitive category. So they may be like, you're great, you have all of these credits, but there's nothing I can do for you because I already have like 10 of you already. So that is something. So in terms of getting your first job, like I said before, is that you find the work. You find, you whether you submit yourself on actorsaccess.com, you meet with directors, whether like, especially if you're in Williamsburg, the directors you meet, the writers you meet, and then in the DC market, you connect with there. You can find your own work and making your own connections. And so that you can kind of establish kind of like a work resume and kind of like already like a foundation to people who know you and trust you and go from there. And you keep doing that until it gets to the point that an agent and or manager does take a chance with you. Because yes, like if you don't have any like high profile credits, they call you what they call in this town developmental. If you don't have those like those notable credits, they'll call you developmental, even if you've done all the theater in the world, all the student films and great indie films. You're still developmental because you haven't done like an episode of like, I don't know what's on TV show these days, like uh Modern Family. I know that that's no longer an example, but it's like if you don't have those credits, they'll call you developmental for that. um any suggestions for child actors? Local agencies both accepting anyone right now due to COVID. Oh yeah, this is going to be a very interesting time, but it's definitely better now than it was, especially a year ago. Now that the vaccinations are happening, especially here in Los Angeles, it's definitely opening up, and there's definitely a lot more productions happening, especially here, Atlanta, Louisiana, and those in New York, especially. Uh, in terms of child actors, the same thing applies. It's like everything I said about like putting yourself out there for your child. Oh yeah, when it comes to kid actors, you never want to pay for headshots because kids grow up way too fast. You're gonna be wasting money. So just take like a good camera, get a friend who knows how to take a photo. Just take a shot of your kids smiling and like doing what they do, and then that's what you're going to submit to agencies, and that's all they need. And then just you're probably gonna have to get that replaced within like 6 months because kids grow up way too fast. So never, that's the one important rule that I've seen parents make the mistake of: don't pay for headshots, because until your kids get to the point where they stop growing, it's going to just be a waste of money. So local agencies are accepting, like, but that's just, not just child actors, but just any actors. They're always looking, no matter what season it is, no matter if we're hit by the plague or not, art will always survive. So it doesn't mean they're going to stop looking. They're always going to be looking. So just like put yourself out there, put your kid out there, and just go with that. Now, when it comes to special tips, opportunities for older folks who are 65 uh, above or around that age, it's the same thing. I've had concerns from older actors who were like, who, let's say, they never got into acting, like they had life before they, they did, and then they decided, now I'm going to be an actor, and they think it's too late for me, like, and I say no, it's never too late. It may be too late if you want to be a star, which that's going to be, I should have said it at the beginning. Every actor who gets into the acting business needs to go like shoo away the notion that they're going to be a star. Your goal is not to be a star. Your goal is to tell stories. Your goal is to work. Your goal is to make connections and meet great people along the way and be able to tell these stories. If you get to be a star, amazing. That's like a really, really special cherry on top, but that should never be your priority. That should never be your focus. And that will especially apply to people who are starting later in life in terms of their acting career and thinking it's going to be too late for it. And I'm like, look, everyone, especially if you're 65 and older, all these movies and TV shows need some sort of grandparent, need some sort of like older character, needs some sort of wise person, needs that curmudgeon kind of person, like the whole rainbow spectrum of what they need, especially for the older generation. They need that. So it doesn't mean that you're going to be possibly a star right away, but there's plenty of like opportunities in terms of roles that are out there. Now, I could probably get into the whole like rant about like, yes, Hollywood is a little bit biased that they're not going to have like the main characters be the older generation, which is a whole can of worms entirely. But there is work in that sense because they always need that grandparent figure, that older parent figure. That is something that they'll always need. And so by saying that, there are opportunities always, 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 always for older folks. But that does mean that you need to probably hustle just as hard, if not harder, than younger people who start out because you're going to be competing with people who already had like decades of experience already. You're going to be competing with those guys. That's the hard part of it. There is the thing that if you're a kid actor, you're starting as a teenager, it's easier because you're starting out with people who haven't acted yet and they need like if a Nickelodeon show needs like teenagers or a Disney show, that's kind of an easier foot into the door. But if you're an older actor, it can get a little more difficult, which is why I think going way back to what I said about knowing who you are, knowing your type, and if you know your type, especially as an actor, it will be invaluable in a sense of like it'll help you stand out a little bit more with the rest of your competition because you showcase who you are in terms of making that unique. So hopefully that answers that question, that there are always opportunities for people who are 65 and that age. If you're looking for that first project and you're based somewhere near Washington, D.C., I might be at oh, thank you. Oh, hey, Ted.
Hi. Just want to throw that out there. If somebody is looking for that first filmmaking project, I make short films in the Washington, D.C. area.
I'm gonna give Ted a shout out there. Yes, he has a short film that's part of the William Mary Global Film Festival. A fantastic short film. I should have said it when we had our interview. You kind of remind me of like Robert Rodriguez. Is that you know how to do everything. You learn how to do everything and you make it all work. So yes, Ted is in the DC area. If you guys are around there and you're like, hey, I need to make some footage, Ted's your man. Hit him up. What was I going to say? I was going to bring this up because it brings into focus of marketing. So marketing is essential. You need to know not only like knowing yourself as an actor, but having the mindset that you are a product, that you need to sell yourself, and obviously in well manners. But for me, what definitely helped me was that about 8 years ago, I marketed myself with this fat pastry product called Cinnabon. Cinnabon is a thing you find in airports and malls. It's that fat pastry product that has you have like a cardiac arrest after you eat it. But I'm obsessed with that product. And I got to the point that my friends were like, you need to put yourself out there, market yourself with Cinnabon as an actor. And I thought that was the dumbest idea I've ever heard until I decided just to make postcards and like a marketing material and having a whole social media kind of thing about Cinnabon. And I realized it worked because it got to the point that casting directors and agents remembered me or knew me as like, oh, that actor who's really, really obsessed with Cinnabons. Not to say that you go find your nearest like gluttony items and be like, okay, I'm going to market myself with that. Because once again, everything I've said before is about being genuine. Do you really, really love it? I really love Cinnabon. There's no joke about it. I ate 3 Cinnabons in one sitting and I nearly died because of that. But I appreciate the experience nonetheless. That marketing thing has taught other actors about knowing your brand, knowing what sells for you and what makes you stand out a little more, so that if you are an individual who you're a horseback rider, or you're good with archery, or you're a tap dancer, or you're these kind of like these special skills that you think are weird that no one knows, that's going to be your ticket in, just to get people to remember you. So if you're a tap dancer, have some sort of like a postcard, some sort of like a photo shoot, or some sort of thing that showcases that this is what I do, this is who I am, and this is what I can do. And so these are the things you need to have to keep in mind, because being an actor is an extraordinary difficult task. Like there are so many actors who are like you, who are just as talented as you are. So how do you stand out from that? And that's something that I just, when I just said the word talent is good. Talent will get you far, sure, but talent, more often not, is not everything. A lot of times when it comes to television and film, and sometimes even theater, is that talent has no part in it. It's just because that actor looked the part better or sounded the part better, or he or she is best friends with so and so or so and so, or there are multiple cases, more often than not, that I like to recount, that the reason why this particular person was not hired was that this person reminded too much of the director's ex. That's it. That's simply the reason why this person did not get hired, even though she was clearly the best actress in the room, like the best. There was no question about it. They went with those actors who was like definitely subpar from her, but the only reason was that the director's like, I don't want to work with someone who reminds me of her. I'm like, yikes. All right. And that taught me a lot about the industry because it can be so fickle. It can be so like random. So that's why when you get a rejection, that's one of the most essential lessons to learn as an actor, and something to know now before you kind of get burned out way too fast when you move to Los Angeles. Because I was just watching like the Step Up movies with my partner, and there was a scene where in one of the movies where the main characters got bummed out because they were in LA for 6 months, and they're like, oh, it's not working out for me. I'm like, 6 months? Come on, man. You gotta at least put like 3 to 5 years into it. So just because it didn't work out for you for 6 months, a year even, like it doesn't mean you're a failure. It means that I think what makes you a failure is that you stop trying, is that you stop learning how to be better. So it's like if this opportunity didn't work out, it doesn't mean you just be like, all right, I quit everything now. It's like, all right, what can I do to be proactive? Because I think proactivity is the key to survival as an actor. So that you're never really just like waiting for something to happen. And that's a mistake that actors always have, that if they have a talent rep, they think that their job is done. They can just like sit back and let the agent do all the work. You got to keep working. You got to go to the film festivals. You got to go collaborate with people. You got to go meet people like Ted, work with them. These are the kind of things that you need to do to be proactive. And if you can have that mindset, agency or no agency, that is the key success to longevity. That the ones who continue to work for like decades and decades on is that they have the work ethic, and most importantly, they have the ability to stay humble and to stay grounded, which is a lot easier said than done. And there's many cases where even now that my ego has gone through the roof because I'm like, I've done all these great things, and in the end, when it comes to acting, you can have a good run where you can have all these TV shows and these commercials, you're making a lot of money this one year, and then the next few years, nothing. Like, and that happens a lot more than one would think. Just because you've done these things, there's no such thing as a skyward trajectory. It's more just like you go here and then it kind of goes down. And sometimes you go backwards. And then sometimes you go forward. And then sometimes you go up again and go down again. And this will go on and on and on and on forever. So as an actor or someone interested in acting, you have to be okay with that. Like really know, like what I'm telling you right now, there's no upward trajectory of success. It's just whatever it is. And sometimes the obstacles in your course, especially for the college students who are thinking of going to acting, but they have parents like, no, you should be a lawyer, you should be that kind of thing. Like parents, I always say to prospective actors, never listen to them. Actors, I mean, unless the parents know acting really, like they are actors. 99% of the time, they have no idea what the heck they're talking about. So don't even listen to them. Like they have no idea. So I've had like, especially when I'm starting out, I've done like TV shows. I'll say like one line, which was a big deal to me because I was like, oh my god, I'm on like this Fox TV show, and then my parent would watch it and be like, that was it. That's it. Just one line. What are you doing? What are you doing with your time? I'm like, I'll never talk to you about acting ever again. And that's something I'll tell actors. Like, don't talk to them about that. If they ask you how things are going, like, oh, just be like, everything's great. Never tell parents that things are going wrong. I mean, yes, I know there are those out there who have really tight knit relationships with their parents and that kind of thing. But I always say you don't need to tell them everything about like if things are going wrong with acting. Just say things are going great. It may not be, but hey, that's the acting journey. There's always going to be hardships no matter where you are in your career. Even if you're at it for 15 years, you have all these amazing things. It can all come crashing down in an instant, and it can instantly come back up in an instant. And that's like the mysterious nature of this industry, where it's just like I've seen people who have struggled and toiled for like for decades. And then they finally got that one opportunity because it was that part that was meant for them. They got that part and it just blew them out of the water. And then there are people I know who have like massive success in their early teens. And then like for whatever reason, they were like considered not castable for like a good 5-10 years. And then they hit their stride again. And so that's the thing. So it's just like you as an actor should never think about fame or glory or success. It's about craft. It's about the art. It's about the stories you want to tell. And I think the actors who have the grounded base of like, I want to tell a story and that's what I want to do, you will survive this. You will be able to move on from that. Treat lying about how well it's going as an acting assistant. Yeah. Treat lying, yeah. So just like, oh, everything's great. Just learn how to lie that in front of your parents. I'm not encouraging people to lie, but sometimes you just might have to fudge the truth a little bit. So they're not going to go all crazy on you. So that you have to like, and then they'll tell you about stories about how your cousin is doing so well and he has a house already and he has a wife and all that stuff. Who cares? That's none. So have you developed coping mechanisms and best practice for how frustrating, uncertain life as an actor is? Yes. You need to be able to be an individual who have passions, who have people who care about you that have nothing to do with acting, like nothing. Uh, you need people who will remind you, like I'm very fortunate. I have a partner who will constantly remind me that every time I have an ego trip or every time I get like very, very sad because I didn't get this part, she will like, yo, look, you got a house over your head. You got people who you love you. You got cats that you need to take care of. You need to feed. Like these are things like the basics of life. You need people who will tell you as it is. And a lot of times and sometimes the danger is that if you're in the acting community, you'll be surrounded by actors who constantly will be always worried and depressed about that. You need people outside of that who does understand what you're going through, but at the same time be like, hey man, there are bigger issues in the world than just like you didn't get this part. There'll always be the next part. So not only just having people who will grind you, but also having activities that have nothing to do with acting. Because if all you have is just like I got to worry about this audition, or I got these acting class to do, or I got this and this and this, and you got no interest other than that, it will lead you to depression, like guaranteed. You will need to have passions, whether it be as simple as like sewing or exercising or like tap dancing or anything like that. Find something that is an outlet that has nothing to do with your career because it'll be an escape outlet so that you can like spend time being like, okay, I'm gonna get my head out of the game for a bit and then always come back to it. Notice many actors have part-time jobs or full-time jobs while also pursuing professional acting careers. Is it better to do that or to go all in without a part-time, full-time job? That is a very hard question because it depends on your financial situation. Some made a decision to go full-time without don't doing any acting and then like make enough money and then do acting and then go back to it, which could work. The thing about acting is that you need to have the momentum, like you need to keep going so that if you do take a hiatus, it is going to be difficult to get yourself back started again. Like it's going to take people to be because everyone has the memory of a squirrel or rather a goldfish. Like they're not going to remember you. So if you're out of town and you're not doing things for like a year, unless you were that amazing and that like memorable, 99% of the time they're going to forget who you are. So if you take yourself out again, you have to be aware that it's going to be a little hard to get back into it. It's not impossible. So that if there are moms and dads who take a break because they need to take care of the kids and be like, oh, I don't know if I should get back into it. No one's going to remember it. True. But you have to remember, just work harder. It'll work. So in terms of part-time jobs, like obviously the stereotype job is being a waiter or being a job that is flexible with hours. Yes, being a waiter will sometimes not be flexible because a lot of times these auditions will come so last minute. You will be working in your restaurant, and then at 7 p.m., your commercial agent goes, hey, you have an audition at 3 p.m. And then you go, oh crap, because I have my shift at that same time. What am I going to do? You have two options. Two options is one is that you tell your workplace, be like, hey, I need to come late, or you try to get someone to switch with you, and then see if that works. And then number two is you like bypass the audition. I've seen actors sacrifice auditions because they favored their daytime. They worried about the security of the job. And I tell actors, this is once again a very blanket statement because it can be dependent on your financial situation. But the daytime job is not the reason why you came to LA or New York to be an actor. Like you didn't work at this restaurant, so that was your dream. Your dream was to be an actor. So that if it means that if no one can replace your shift and your boss is like, well, if you don't get anyone to replace you, and you go to this audition, I'm gonna fire you. Fire me. Like, all right, whatever. And I've done that before, and actually surprisingly, because it somehow worked out that way, like maybe 60% of the time they'll kind of grumble at you and be like, well, all right. And then they'll find someone and they'll find someone to take over. You need to get fired from it. And there are times, yes, where I have been fired, where I have been replaced because I prioritize acting, that kind of thing. And when it comes to these kind of jobs, daytime jobs, I've heard actors who don't tell the boss that they're an actor, and then they're the ones who are very upfront about it. I'm in the camp of being honest about it because I don't want to surprise them when I'm like, "Hey, I have an audition," or rather, I've seen people like, "Hey, my cousin is really sick. I need to go." And then at some point, it's like, how many cousins do you have that are sick? Like you only have so much until that excuse is out. So it's better to just go with the truth that you are an actor and that you know that you will give 100%, 110% to this job, but that acting is important to you. And sometimes when push comes to shove, it will be in a favor for people to be like, hey, choose your acting over this because and then sometimes, yes, you can prioritize it or you can like make compromises. So it's like, maybe it's not like a huge project, or you can ask your agent, hey, because nowadays, especially during the pandemic, is like, is there a self-tape option? Can I just tape this at home? Which more often than not these days, they're gonna say yes. So you always try to find every avenue possible so you can find a way to satisfy both parties. But when push comes to shove, when in the end, I will always say choose acting over your daytime job, because once again, you have to think about, why did you come to this town in the first place? So yes, hopefully it answers most of your questions. But yeah,